Okay, welcome back. So now we are in the getting into the 21st century, and we are getting for the future, right? Right now we are staring at a digitally transformed future. What is going to be the future? The the future, what we are looking at right now, we are in the middle of the transition, right? Is going to be the trust bearer or guarantor is decentralized computer network. Central banks and commercial banks are not going to be anymore in the place of the trust bearer or the guarantor, because systematically the trust on banks started breaking up a long time ago. Slowly, more and more banks failures, bank um, defaults and corruptions, you just don't trust banks to control the trust. So the decentralized computer network is what going is already happening, which is blockchain, right? Already happening, and it's going to be the future. Decentralized computer network, that means not one computer, bank's computer or central bank's computer, which you are going to be relying on. It's going to be distributed um, for various reasons, but you are going to be relying on decentralized computer network. Now, this is the interesting part where we are getting into, right? The the trust. The trust, watch carefully, read carefully from the screen and watch carefully what I say. The commitment is cryptocurrency backed by thousands of decentralized and distributed computers is going to be the commitment. Crypto network, currency, you can call it as a currency, but then we call it as a digital asset. So cryptographic network, right? With the encrypted cryptographic network backed by thousands of decentralized distributed computers. So no single party can hack it. No single party can hijack it. It just, the trust is dispersed. So in order to read it, only the concerned party should be able to put the pieces together after getting the permission, right? Not a third party cannot read it. Even the custodian cannot read it, right? That's the commitment. And who is going to be the mediator? This is the interesting part. No mediator. All these thousands of years, we were relying on mediators. For the first time in the humanity, in the history of humanity, we are getting into an era where we don't need mediator for any transaction. That's the beauty of blockchain as a concept, right? It's not just a concept now, it's kind of reality. No mediator. Imagine you do some transaction without worrying about the mediator, without a mediator necessary. If you still want to have an additional mediator, that's your freedom to do it. But once this we are getting into era of yeah, trustless network. Basically, you don't have to worry about the trust. Trust is taken out of the equation. That means what? You basically trust the algorithms. If you know the network and you know the foundation algorithm of the network, that cannot be, that is immutable. Nobody can change that, right? Except even for the same parties going back and trying to change it, you will not be able to change. That's the automatic trust created. In fact, during the group discussions, we've been discussing even this morning, bunch of youngsters, they kind of are very knowledgeable, discussing about the trust. They had a fantastic view on the on trust part. The network, the artificial neural network, right? Why ANN is required? Why mathematically driven algorithm networks is required? Why the hell somebody like me has gone, put a lot of time to create something like Karma Capsule Network is just because of this. You can't have a trustless system without creating a network that would that is driven by autonomous mathematical algorithm, which is not intervened by human self, um, you know self secured, self endorsed, self adaptive system without expecting any third party to get in, right? Self learning but not immuting itself. That's the beauty of it, right? And then collective memory or ledger, that ledgering is the distributed ledger, which is again, most of the people call that alone as a blockchain. But for me, one of the three legs of blockchain is distributed ledger. Then what is going to be the issuer? Who is going to be the issuer? The digital currency algorithm. The algorithm is the issuer of the currency. In our case, we call it as a digital asset for which a Karma Capsule network is creating. Basically, Karma Capsule. That is going to the algorithm which we will be developing. There may be more than one algorithm, but then the basic physics of the Karma Capsule network would never change, but then algorithms could vary. But even the algorithms done for one use case or one organization or one community of transactions, the algorithm will be fixed, immutable, and that alone would be the issuer of these currencies, right? uh, the paper currency would, but government paper currency would exist parallel, but the transactions would be happening in the network. And at one point of time, we may not even need the government papers. Okay. Yes. Rohit, you want to say something?
Nothing. I was just talked like about the currencies which you are speaking. Like there will be no paper currencies.
Yeah.
So
Good. So that's going to be the reality, because paper currency is fiat currency. Somebody's, I know I can talk hours on that topic, but I don't want to deviate this, but I'll give you anyway. It's a food for thought, right? Um, it's just the fiat currency, right? As we the problem, guys, can you mute yourself? You guys have to mute. I think it's Krishna. You got to mute. See the Krishna, can you mute yourself? Okay, thank you. So the problem with the fiat currency, right? Why there is a problem with the fiat currency? Because it's fiat. Right now, uh, somebody is printing more money. If you have, it's a very simple calculation, right? Why fiat currency? Why you should not go run behind a currency, whether it is dollar or rupee, it doesn't matter. Why you should not be relying on currency? Currency was invented. If you take any money, okay, you take a dollar. um, Let me read it to you guys. Can you see my screen? Oh, sorry, let me. You can see my, right? Can you read what is here?
It's a $10 note.
Read it.
So you are unable. We aren't unable to audio.
Blurry, sir.
What's that?
It is little bit.
Sir, your voice
It's
is
blurred,
audible
sir.
to you.
Actually, only can see the serial number of it. The rest of the things are blurred.
Okay,
Okay.
if I can't read it, but what I
Sir,
guess
we are
is
not able to understand your voice.
hello. Yeah, I am not able to read, but I what I can guess is it must be the I promise to pay $10 to this guy.
Right.
This is just a promise.
Right. It's just a promise. So let me read it for you. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Basically, I promise this is a legal tender. I promise to pay $10, right? If
Sir, your voice is not audible.
can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you clearly. Yeah, it must be his
No, sir.
bandwidth.
Okay.
It's not audible.
So if this is money, if this has $10 value, why it is written that this is a legal tender that I promise to pay $10, right? If this itself is $10, why it says this is only a document which says I will promise $10? Then what that $10 is? What exactly that $10? It's just a promise. It's just a promissory note. It's worth nothing, right? We only trust the government so that the value of it. You buy something for worth $10, right? Now you have this $10 in hand with you, right? You hold it. Then they go say the whole circulation throughout the world. Imagine just for the hypothetical, just for understanding clearly mathematically very well. The whole world has say $100 or say $1,000. The entire world, the government printed money was $1,000, and you have $20 in hand, okay? And you're not exchanging; you're keeping it with you. You what percentage of what is this its value with respect to the entirety, the sigma, right? The whole the whole, and what is your part? What is the percentage of your part? What is
20%.
the, no, $1,000 versus $10?
Ninety percent.
No, no. One,
0.01.
0.01.
0.0.
say let's say
Point
$100. Say let's say $100, okay?
It's 1%.
0.001.
You have no, the whole world has only $100 and you hold $10. What percentage you own of the
10%. 10%.
10%? You own 10%, right? So this money value is, you only value this money based on, hey, I own 10% of the entire, right? Now the government goes and prints another $100, $100 more, right? The same day.
Yes.
Today you hold it. Tomorrow, the government goes and prints another $100. Okay, what's the worth of this?
$10.
It may say
Same $10,
$10.
but
It may say
but 5%.
$10. The value is
5%.
only 5%. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you literally lost half of the value of the what you are trying to hold. Okay. If you went today, before they print, if you went today to exchange this $10 for a tiny piece of gold, okay, you would have kept yourself in the game, right? Because the value of gold, you cannot print it.
Yeah, it is an asset.
It's an
Basically.
asset, right? It's not a fiat. That alone would give you a good understanding of why these fiat currencies should not be trusted and should not be, it just created for tendering purpose. Then the government was not supposed to print more. They were supposed to, there were the time, there used to be a concept of what? Reserve system, correct? You're supposed to print only the money equal to, you take the $10 or 10 rupee, you take a 200 rupee, you should be able to go to the government, ask for any time. The government should give the worth of gold back to you in their reserve, right? Government is supposed to keep the reserve of gold or precious metals in their custody. So they should be able to exchange. That's all gone without telling the citizens. Of course, in the US, they did declare it in 1974. Nixon did it in one stroke. He took away the dollar value attached from gold. He detached it. That means from that point onwards, it became the fiat currency. And in countries like India, it just nobody told. They just did it. They just did it because how it happens, right? They just simply did it without telling the public. um, I had a very interesting conversation about 10 years ago with a few RBI guys, and I asked the same question. Do we really follow the gold standard? They said no. It's all gone. 90s itself. It was not told, but then that's a practice from the 90s, and that created a more capitalistic economy because the elasticity of money and all these things. The big guys who use all these loose words, right? They call with fancy words, but end of the day, they can print more money. So there is no point in for you to keep try to catch up with that. The only game is to play with the assets. Anyway, so that's going to be the promise of bitcoins and all, right? Why it came? Because of this thing, people got pissed off. Some people got pissed off that why we are allowing governments to keep printing so too much of money, and then we rely on it. We work hard for this, and then suddenly somebody is snatching the game away from us, right? That's why the digital currency were created in the first place. They've been dumped many times in the past, but finally, because of the trust, the previous digital currencies were all failed because they failed to convince the proper, trustlessness. But then Bitcoin created, magic by using the algorithm itself. You create the trustlessness. That was the beginning of the era of digital currency. Okay. So the current industry problems. Let's see current industry problems in order to understand further on blockchain. So what are the current industry problems? One is the exponential data coming in. From edge devices and equipments. A lot of data keep coming from edge devices and equipments, and then there is a need for real-time analytics, right? You can catch up, as I was telling in the previous sessions. More and more internet is been now populated by more machines, so it's not possible to catch up with the real-time data, and that something needs to be done there. Centralized systems with siloed ledgers and central authority for the for the trust, that we rely too much on central authorities to keep telling us you need to trust them, including the banks and including the government. The data is duplicated with the various databases. So we keep on duplicating the data everywhere. As when we create more and more technology systems, the data gets duplicated everywhere. So the historical analysis is kind of a bit very difficult to go if you are keep on having copies of multiple versions and copies of the data everywhere, right? So there has to be something needs to be done there. Systems have access points prone to fraudulent entry. So many systems has many access points exposed. So that would expose the risk of fraud. Then the transactions are not monetized well because of the validation delays and inefficient process validation. So many times the monetization, the transactions, two parties are not doing the transaction because um, the validation of the transaction between the parties, people don't trust, or the delays in validation because you keep too many things in too many places. The system failed to find hotspot for values. The current systems are all done for the sake of doing it, because you wanted to do some project, create new systems. But when you go and ask the custodians what the value you are generating out of this particular IT system, they pretty much are going to be, going, they're going to blink. They just don't have idea what value they are generating out of the system. So the evidences, there are many evidences around the world for this. There are delays with the inefficient business process. Bank to validate some identity of criminal history. There are 37 days average for amount of time to do something for a corporation, and the 3 days amount of time to sell a share of a stock. Then there were frauds in the industry with the flaws in the digital, kind of a uncooked or a half-cooked digitalization, billions and billions of dollars, tax frauds, and cyber threats, and IoT not matching with the readiness. So there was a 40 billion devices being connected to the internet, and there's no proper system to catch up with it. And then the 32% of the organizations around the world use IoT, but there's no strategy to monetize. So these are the evidences, right? The business models, right? Traditional business model versus artificial intelligence model. The supply chain executives say that 80% of us, more than 80% of the executives are saying that they would increasingly use distributed networks to meet customer demands, not the traditional supply chain systems. So machines, too many machines getting into it, a lot of pressure for digital transformation, all these things adds value. And you might have seen the modern day frauds in terms of the digital certificates, trade certificates, like Nirav Modi, in terms of the diamond, the diamond merchants, the largest fraud, and the certificate, um, the trust certificate between the banks. He could able to multiply it many times because he could able to find kind of a loophole in the system to keep issuing more and more the LOCs, right? All these evidences are there. And what are the root causes of all these problems? Lack of transparency, inefficiency of intermediaries. There are too many intermediaries there, right? For every transactions, everything to happen, there are too many intermediaries. Transparency is lagging. People try to hide the information. Inefficiency in the process itself fails, right? Even with less intermediaries, sometimes the process is so bureaucratically bad or poorly executed. So a lot of inefficiency is there. Then the lack of trust. You don't have trust on, there are too many trust on people, the machines, centralized machines and all play the role. There's a lack of trust. And lack of intelligence is the last aspect. So these are the root causes for the problems. What's the solution? Solution is to create decentralized distributed ledgers. That's what blockchain comes in. So our DigiBlitz perspective adds, we go much deeper into it by bringing the artificial intelligence and then encapsulation into it. But just by distributed ledgering itself will solve most of the problems, but majority of the problems, not most. Then adding the AI piece to it would solve a lot more. Finding the hotspot for the values within the enterprise. We would find the values within the enterprise easily by digitalization and blockchain. Okay. So more, and then consortium models of blockchain makes it easier for a variety of government models with a different parties with consensus. So even the government are realizing more and more they have to be distributed. The constitution of a country democratically, the democratic republic countries run by constitution, it is supposed to be the automated autonomous thing. Unfortunately, people hijack it, right, for their own benefits. Politicians and bureaucrats hijack it. Now there are some digital countries now, completely run by blockchain, right? Some cities like Dubai is an example, Singapore is an example that runs on blockchain, and the entire Estonia is a perfect example in Europe that's run by blockchain. So things are happening. So the solution relies on smart contracts driven by artificial intelligence, and then consensus algorithm where you do bring in the consensus to make a decision among the parties, right, among the custodians through algorithm, not through personal consensus, but pre-written algorithms. So is the blockchain answer for everything? Not necessarily, but just ask these questions: whether is your business or your social ecosystem around you needs to be secure, shared, distributed, decentralized, or need to be self-authoritative, and need to monetize the data, and monetize intelligence, need to be automated. Then you probably will find answers why blockchain is required for you. Okay, now let's see how blockchain in its a very simplified form, what exactly this distributed computing and distributed ledgering works. Imagine node is nothing but a computer or a person having a computer, right? So there are 5 nodes doing some transaction, right? Node 1, before the consensus, the node 1, right, has green, green, and green as a 3 transaction blocks. Then at 9:50 a.m. At 9:52 a.m., there was some new transaction called blue got added into the ledger, right? At node 2, the computer 2 is actually registering a new transaction. Then node 3 at 10:54, 2 minutes later, node 3 is registering another transaction, a different transaction, not the blue, right? The 4th one from node 2 is blue, a different transaction. Then node 3 is registering completely different transaction as a 4th transaction in the entire chain, right? Node 4 remains at 9:50 remains the same, and node 5 remains the same at 9:50. Now there is a consensus, right? The parties get together, all the nodes get together into consensus. The consensus driven by proof of work, basically how you do the consensus, whether who received first transaction, whether blue has to come before red, before orange, or orange has to go, all these things has to be decided. That's called consensus, right? So there are various consensus decided among the parties. They discuss, the computers discuss, keep through distributed computing, distributed communication. They talk to each other, maybe through cloud or maybe through private network. It doesn't really matter, but these are all distributed individual computers. They talk to each other, right? And then they come to final conclusion. Remember, the consensus is a algorithm, pre-written algorithm. It's not somebody's going to simply put sitting behind the computer and keep operating it, right? It's a pre-written, mathematically pre-weighted algorithm, which is immutable. So after the consensus done, what's the situation? At 9:55 a.m., consensus is done. Node 1 is registering blue first and orange second. Node 2 is doing blue and orange. Node 3 same. Everybody is updating their ledger. And how they decided blue has to be before orange? In this case, first come first serve. Time was the only thing taken into effect, right? Not proof of stake or anything else, just time. So because blue arrived at 9:52 a.m. and orange arrived at 9:54 a.m., that's why a simple consensus, everybody agreed, hey, blue transaction came first, so let's keep blue transaction. This is a very simplified form of blockchain, right? You can make it more and more and more complex by introducing other consensus. Like, what if we go beyond the time? What if not the provenance, but the validity of the transaction, verification of the transaction? Blue arrived first, but orange got verified first, or orange went through the KYC, know your customer, vetting process, authenticity of the transaction. And then the proof of authority, orange could able to pass much higher on the proof of authority. So let's give orange the heads up, because blue probably might withdraw once we put orange, because we trust orange more than blue, right? We still will take orange, blue, but then once orange is registering a transaction between parties, blue, whatever blue says would not be about those transactions inside orange. Blue has nothing to say about it because it already lost the provenance. Okay. Let me go back, put a make a quick stop here and take some questions. Okay, because it's so important to learn things in its simplicity, right? This is the most simple explanation without getting into currency or anything. Now let me take some questions here.
Suresh,
Yes.
yes. With regards to your patented karma capsule, what is this? What is the relationship, or what is the? Is it the same concept as container for in blockchain?
Yes. The karma capsule network is still a blockchain. But what instead of blocks of transaction, it is going to have the assets, right? We still can write a bunch of transactions into a capsule, but the primary purpose of Karma Capsule Network is to capture not just the transactions into an object or a kind of a capsule, but also the asset values that happen at that particular moment of time. So this could be a simplified version of Karma Capsule, right? All it does is it just records few transactions. It could be that simple, or it could be the most complex in terms of creating a real capturing value of certain assets.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is Karma Capsule is like a framework over the blockchain, like Hyperledger Fabric and Ethereum, or it is something else?
That's it is the same. The foundational framework is the same. It is a new blockchain by itself. It's not going to run on any other existing platform. It itself is a blockchain. That means it is going to be. The foundation is based on the tree structure. Like each one of the blockchain is based on some graph theory, right? So how you keep building these blocks of information. So what we are relying is on a unique theory. We are not going to compete on transaction speed and all. We only rely on, because we are creating asset tree, right? Our job is to create assets, because that's the reason I took a little bit of time to explain why I hate fiat currencies. That I'm not going to be party to create another fiat digital currency. It doesn't matter, right? End of the day, if you are, even if you say soft cap and hard cap, right? The Bitcoin is a, I would not agree that it has a cap, because Bitcoin keeps issuing the divisive numbers. So Bitcoin may claim, oh, we are going to have only the maximum these many digital assets. Mathematically, it is impossible to create more. I agree to that, but then it doesn't stop from people dividing the Bitcoin. So when you buy a Bitcoin, you don't buy one Bitcoin, you buy division of the Bitcoin. That means what? You can keep like you say that, oh, it has only one atom, but you can keep splitting it into elements, right? But then that's essentially the same thing. You have multiple, you can keep dividing it into 1 millionth of the of an atom as well. So that's where we are refraining from creating one another platform. We don't need, the world doesn't need another platform like Ethereum or Hyperledger Fabric. It only requires a unique platform that would purely focus on real asset creation or value creation. That's what we are. I'm not saying others don't do it, but we only purely focus on
Sir, I have a question.
that. Sure.
So if you have an digital asset, if so for example, its value changes every minute in the market, right? So once the capsule is created, the value will be updated in the same capsule, or we will be creating a new capsule for every change in the value of asset.
That's what we are going to let it based on what ecosystem it's going to play, right? We are not going to create one massive karma capsule network for the entire world. We ourselves are against it, right? So we would create multiple networks of karma capsules, and then within that ecosystem, right? If you are, say for example, if you are creating a karma capsule network for retailers, right? Retail sellers, then that karma capsule network is purely designed for that purpose, and the value of each one of the capsule will be depending on the transaction happening within that ecosystem. And the purpose of creating it as a reinforced convolutional kind of a convolution network, but the CapsNet is to self-learning and have a mass build, keep reinforcing the values, keep feedbacking and doing the feedback, so that the assets value will automatically get updated as the things happens in the environment. So karma capsule will read from the environment,